And in the wake of this horrific deadly attack in New Orleans, police in many cities around the country are responding by increasing security measures, including here in Connecticut. Your reporter Marcy Jones joins us now live at State Police Headquarters in Middletown with how investigators are working to hopefully prevent a similar type of tragedy from happening in our state. Good morning, Marcy.
That's right. Good morning, Roger. Well, what happened Wednesday morning in New Orleans could easily happen anywhere where large crowds gather. That's exactly why agencies like Connecticut State Police are constantly reassessing how they can keep everyone safe. Threat assessment for large events is nothing new to law enforcement. However, in the wake of Wednesday's mass tragedy in New Orleans, many agencies are focusing more on infrastructure surrounding large events. Utilizing large trucks, dumpsters, snowplows, and other barriers is something law enforcement agencies are factoring into planning for large event crowds.
It's much more professional, the planning at the events here in Connecticut that I've seen, that I'm used to, in the coordination through the Joint Terrorism Task Force for the fusion centers.
Connecticut State Police tell Eyewitness News during this time of year, additional patrols are already in place statewide, saying in part, quote, "Our intelligent operations unit remains a vital component towards this mission by actively monitoring incidents both locally and nationally in order to deploy the appropriate resources as necessary to head off a tragedy before it occurs." They also made sure to stress that there's no known threat currently to the citizens of Connecticut. Your reporter in Middletown, Marcy Jones, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
Marcy, thank you. We're also